Hi guys, I'm Denny, and I started the Sunday gym because I've noticed lately that people tend to go to colleges and universities without actually knowing why they're there. Afterwards, starting jobs that are unfulfilling. So I'm interviewing different professionals to see what they have to say and to share their experience and knowledge with you. I hope you enjoy it.
Hi, and welcome to the Morning Jam podcast. You haven't clicked on the wrong thumbnail. We are turning the tables around and having Danny on the podcast, and we are asking him the three questions that Danny has been so kind to ask all his guests. What do you do for a living? How did you get there? And how do you knew that this was the way to go? So without further ado, Danny, Merry Christmas. Welcome to the show. And let's start with the first one. What do you do for a living?
Hello, Rusio. Thank you for having me. Merry Christmas. I'm doing rather well. I hope things are fine with you. Currently, I am auditing the payments for transportations in the company that I currently work at. I started a new position a couple of months ago, but all in all, for the last about 10 years, I have always been involved in a financial department because, after all, this is what I graduated in high school. This is what I graduated from college and later on from university. I was rather young when I knew what I was going to do in life. Honestly, it was just a series of events that kind of one step after another, and that's basically how things were all the time for the last 10 years.
Would you mind going a little bit into detail? What did you study? How did you choose this? And yeah, what's your experience been so far?
Yes, well, I graduated a financial high school as with a profile. Afterwards, I went to college. I graduated marketing and finance, and afterwards, I went for business administration as a master's degree. And I can talk all and know how that happened and that happened, but truth be told, I'm pretty certain, and Russia, I'm sure you've noticed this as well, that people have this internal knowledge about them and what they want to, and because some of them are ignoring it, some of them are losing their time. I actually had to tell this story to a couple of interns a few weeks ago. A long time ago, there was this TV series with Michael J. Fox called Spin City. I think I was 11, 12 when I saw it, and I somehow knew that I was going to spend the rest of my life in an office. I don't know how and why that happened, but and of course that's not the only reason why I went to study finance. But yeah, I kind of naturally felt that this was for me, and basically this is what I do to summarize the answer for the first question.
So you feel like this work is your true calling, and
It
this.
was 100% a gut feeling, yeah. And none of my family relatives had this experience like that. And in all fairness, the job that we're doing right now, because you know how dynamic the world is,
Mm.
there wasn't such a position when my parents were my age. So yeah, so I'm basically the first person from my family to do something like that.
Sounds interesting. So going into the second question, how did you get there? And especially, how did you decide your path in life to lead you to this current position, to working as a in finance? What? How did you get there?
Honestly, one step after another. I knew that I was going to graduate from the high school that I went, and I knew that I was going to go to a specific college, because back then and right now I'm here in Bulgaria, but I wanted to study elsewhere. I didn't know where exactly, but I knew that I was going to study elsewhere somewhere. So I went to the Danish college here, and being in a Danish college, well, it kind of like I already knew where I was going to study my master's degree because, all Danish stuff. So once I graduated my master's degree in Denmark, I I knew I was going to return home. I knew I was not going to stay over there. And I kind of like back then, I think that was 2012 or 11, something like that. And you know, the outsourcing industry wasn't really as developed as it is now here. So but you know, I knew people here and there, so I was able to secure an internship. uh, the moment I returned, actually, I think I just landed, and the next day I started an internship in a PR company. I don't even know if it exists anymore. And afterwards, I really didn't had a lot of places to go because I had, you know, lack of experience. I was fresh out of university, so I started working in the government. I was working in the EU funding sector because of the English and because of everything else. I was in the EU funding sector of the National Railway Infrastructure Company. And after that, it was a little bit of a bumpy ride because it was a political instability. And I served under 5 government administrations for the time period of 3.5 years. So it was rather crazy, but at least it kind of gave me that ability to adapt, and not in a bad way. I don't mean this in a bad way, you know, to understand how to react and how to act in a certain situation depending on who you're talking to. And it also gave me that view to be genuinely fair and honest regarding of the situation, because the world we live right now in is pretty dynamic, it's pretty odd. So that kind of turbulence really builds up a character. So that's how I started in a financial department, because back then we didn't really have a lot of options. From there, I moved from one place to another, and for the last 4 years, I'm at the company that I'm currently at.
Sounds interesting. So, what would you say if I ask you if you have a pretty international profile. So you studied both at your home country and then you went abroad. So has this helped you as well in your professional career? I've heard you worked on big European Union investment projects as well. As your sort of outside perspective, having studied abroad in Denmark, like broaden your horizons?
In a matter, it confirms something that I already knew. It doesn't matter where you are or who you're talking to. We all have the absolutely the same problems. We really do. So once I confirmed that for myself, I knew that if you had to fix a specific issue and specific problems, whether this is in finance or an environment or social structure or something like that, you first have to fix the problems within you. And because I was very young when I started college. I was 17, and I was 19 or 20 when I started my master's degree. And you know, I was pretty young back then, and I didn't want, at first I didn't want to stay in Bulgaria, and then I didn't want to stay in Denmark, and then I figured out that the problem was never Bulgaria or Denmark, the problem was within me. And once you figure that one out, but you really had to figure it out. Once you do that, you kind of go easy afterwards. Your life kind of tends to get way easier.
I think this leads us to our third question, and this internal struggle that you described within yourself. Then, how did you resolve this, and how did you decide that this was the right way to go?
Somehow, I always knew that this was the right way to go. You know how sometimes you just have this reflex, right? When something like when you put a cup over here and it fails, but you don't even think about catching it, you just catch it. And it was like a reflex for me. I honestly didn't even consider doing anything else but that. I have a separate covered a few separate courses over the years, as a backup in case I will need another job, in case something happens to the company. So I had this as a backup plan, but I'm going to have it as if God forbid something happens right now, I can't work as the position that I have, and I'm going to have to find another job. I did that because of that, but just for like 6-7 months or something like that. Uh, but yeah, I've always been into finances, and I don't know how I knew. It was an instinct. It was a reflex, a gut feeling. I honestly couldn't imagine myself doing anything else.
Do you
And
have some words of advice for people that haven't found their true calling like you? They haven't had this internal call, and they're still struggling with finding out what their true purpose in life is. Do you have some kind of advice for these kinds of people?
I sure do. And a couple of advices. First of all, when somebody tells you to do something, take it under consideration, but don't put it to heart. Or the person who's telling you to do something means well, but doesn't mean they're right. Second, most of the folks tend to go to colleges and universities to get a specific degree and get a specific job purely because of ego reasons. And lately, I've seen this in doctors and in lawyers and engineers. They solely go over there to have the title in front of the name. Forget the ego. There are specific jobs that aren't for you. That's not an insult. That's not a bad thing to admit that something isn't for you. We can't all have the same thing. So don't do it out of ego. If you're gonna do it because you feel it inside. You feel this pull. You have this inner urge to do it. I know you, and I can't explain because nobody can explain it. It's just simply something within us. So, and every person knows what I'm talking about. So when you feel it, something is for you, do it. And do your best, because even if you fail, you did your best. So there's no reason for you to be angry about anything. You did what you had to do. You did it the best way that you could. You failed. That's fine. You're going to fail a lot, and that's a fact. And every time we have a problem, and Rusio, I'm sure you're gonna agree with me on this one. Every time we have a problem, we have it because we are at that level of the problem. If the problem was for a bigger level, we wouldn't even know about it. You and I both, everybody, were dealing with issues that are on our level. If it was below our level, we wouldn't consider it an issue. If it is above our level, we wouldn't even know about it. It's at our level, which means we have the capacity to deal with it. So don't run away from the issue. The issue is over there because you have the capacity to deal with it. So that's basically my advice is, if you do it, don't do it out of ego. Do it because you feel it, because it's right. And don't be afraid of failing. There is, I don't know a person who hasn't failed at least at one thing. So that's basically my advice. Stay out of the ego and get to know yourself.
Couldn't agree more. As I always like to say, failing is a crucial part of learning, and some lessons we need to learn only through practice, and failing and failing again until we get it right.
Couldn't agree more. Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, Denny. It was very enlightening. And thank you to all the listeners of the Morning Jam podcast. I and Denny wish you a Merry Christmas and then Happy New Year. And we'll be back with more podcasts.
Right on. Two for the price of one. Ain't that something? Thank you for hosting the program, Rusio. Merry Christmas and all the best, everybody. Bye. Guys, I hope this one was useful. Please follow the channel on YouTube, Rumble, Gap, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Ring the bell and all the good stuff. Have a nice week ahead, and I'll see you next Sunday.